I need to tell someone what I did, and you're going to think I'm terrible. But there's something about watching the person you love pack their entire life into a duffel bag at midnight that nobody who hasn't experienced it can understand. Everyone keeps telling me I'm better off without him, that he was too sensitive, that any man who can't handle a little criticism isn't worth keeping. They don't know what I said before I called him pathetic. They don't know about the pattern. And they definitely don't know the real reason I pushed him away that night. If I don't tell this story, you'll never understand why I can't sleep anymore, why I flinch every time I hear a door close, why I've started 3 different text messages to him and deleted all of them. But once you know what I know, you'll see why I'm not sure if I had a choice, or if I'm just telling myself that to feel better about what I destroyed. I'm going to tell you everything, including what happened at his sister's wedding 6 months before that night. And the part that makes me look worst, I'm saving that for later because you need to understand how we got there first. You need to know that I wasn't always this person. Marcus moved in with me after dating for 8 months, which everyone said was too fast. My best friend Jenna actually pulled me aside at the housewarming party and asked if I was sure, if I'd really thought this through. I laughed at her. I remember the exact words I used when you know. I felt so smug saying it, like I'd figured out some secret to life that she was too cautious to discover. He was the kind of man who left notes in my work bag. Stupid, small things. You're going to kill that presentation, or don't forget you're having dinner with your mom tonight, love you. I found them embarrassing at first, actually. I never told him that. I'd read them in the office bathroom and feel this weird mix of warmth and something else, something that felt like being watched or monitored, even though I knew that wasn't fair. The first time I snapped at him was 3 months after he moved in. We were at a work function of mine and he'd asked me twice if I wanted another drink. Just twice. But the second time, my colleague Derek was in the middle of telling me about a project opening, and Marcus interrupted to gesture at my empty wine glass with this questioning look. I said, I'm fine, I can get my own drink when I want one, with an edge that made Derek raise his eyebrows. Marcus nodded and walked away, and I watched something shift in his expression as he went. That should have been my first clue about myself. I felt relieved when he left, like I could finally breathe. Here's what I didn't know then: I associate attentiveness with weakness. I'm not sure where I learned that. Maybe from my dad, who always said my mom was smothering him. Maybe from every romantic comedy that taught me love is supposed to be complicated and full of games. Whatever the reason, every time Marcus did something thoughtful, some part of me registered it as neediness instead of love. I thought I was independent. I thought I was just someone who valued her space. I told myself Marcus needed to understand that I wasn't the kind of woman who needed to be coddled or managed. These were the stories I told myself while I was slowly, methodically teaching him that caring about me was dangerous. The night of his sister's wedding, I got drunk. Not sloppy drunk, but enough that my filter disappeared. We were at the hotel bar afterward, just the two of us, and he was scrolling through the photos on his phone, smiling at the pictures of his family. He showed me one of us dancing, and he looked so genuinely happy that I felt something curdle in my stomach. You know what's funny? I said. You look more excited about your sister's wedding than most grooms do about their own. He glanced up at me, still smiling. It's a wedding, I'm happy for her. Right, but like you cried during the vows, your sister's vows. So it was emotional. I took another sip of my drink. It's just interesting, you're very emotional about everything. The smile faded a bit. Is that a problem? And here's where I should have stopped. Here's where a better version of me would have recognized the warning signs in my own behavior and changed course. Instead, I said, it's not a problem, it's just an observation. You feel things really intensely. You say that like it's a bad thing. I didn't say it was bad, I said it was intense. We went to bed without resolving it, and I woke up the next morning with a hangover and the distinct feeling that I'd been cruel for no reason. But Marcus acted normal, made me coffee, suggested we grab breakfast at the hotel restaurant. So I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was overthinking it. Looking back now, I can see he was already learning to absorb my moods, to smooth over my sharp edges by pretending they didn't cut him. But at the time, I just felt grateful we didn't have to have a whole big conversation about it. The criticism became a pattern after that. Small things always framed as observations or jokes. When he'd text me during the day to check in, I started responding with, you know I'm at work, right? When he'd suggest we spend the weekend together, I'd say something like, you don't have any hobbies of your own. Always with a laugh, always deniable. Jenna noticed. We were getting lunch about 4 months before that final night, and she asked how things were going with Marcus. Good, I said. Great, actually. You don't talk about him the way you used to. What do you mean? I don't know, you used to light up when you mentioned him, now you kind of don't. I felt defensive immediately. That's just what happens when you live with someone. The honeymoon phase ends, things get real. Real doesn't have to mean unhappy. I'm not unhappy. Jesus, Jenna, I'm just not posting Instagram captions about how blessed I am every 5 minutes. She held up her hands in surrender, but I could see the concern in her eyes. It made me furious in a way I couldn't explain. How dare she imply there was something wrong with my relationship? How dare she suggest I wasn't handling adult cohabitation correctly? I went home that night and picked a fight with Marcus about dishes in the sink. I can't even remember what I said exactly, but I remember he looked confused and hurt, and I remember feeling powerful because of it. That's the part I'm most ashamed of, I think. I liked that I could hurt him. It made me feel less vulnerable somehow, less likely to be the one who got hurt first. Just when I thought I'd established a comfortable distance, Marcus tried to close the gap. He sat me down one evening about 3 months before everything fell apart and said we needed to talk. I feel like you're pulling away from me, he said. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking slightly. And I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or if something's changed, but I need to know what's going on. This was my moment. This was when I could have been honest, could have examined my own behavior and worked on the issues I was carrying. Instead, I felt trapped. Nothing's going on, I said. You're being paranoid. I'm not being paranoid. You flinch when I touch you sometimes. You roll your eyes when I ask about your day. You don't want to spend time with me on weekends anymore. That's not true. We live together, Marcus. We spend every night together. Being in the same apartment isn't the same as spending time together. I stood up, suddenly desperate to end this conversation. I don't know what you want from me. I'm sorry I'm not performing happiness correctly for you. That's not what I have work to do, I said, and I locked myself in the bedroom for the rest of the night. He slept on the couch. I lay in bed feeling simultaneously guilty and self-righteous, a combination I was becoming very familiar with. In the morning he acted like nothing had happened and I was relieved. See, I told myself, he was overreacting, everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine and I knew it. I started noticing things about myself that I didn't like. The way I'd tense up when I heard his key in the door. The way I'd feel annoyed when he'd try to kiss me goodbye in the morning like it was some obligation I had to fulfill. The way I'd mentally catalog his flaws to justify my own coldness. He chewed too loudly. He was too enthusiastic about bad movies. He got too excited about his friend's good news. He cared too much about things that didn't matter. These were the reasons I gave myself for why I was pulling away. But deep down I knew the real reason had nothing to do with him. I was terrified. Absolutely terrified of how much I'd loved him at the beginning, of how vulnerable that love had made me feel. Every note he left, every thoughtful gesture, every moment of genuine care was like evidence that could be used against me later. If I let myself need him, if I let myself rely on that kindness, what would happen when it was taken away? So I took it away first. Slowly, methodically, I taught him that loving me was a losing game. The jealousy started about 6 weeks before the end. We were at a bar with some of my coworkers and Derek was there. Derek, who'd recently gone through a divorce and was apparently making it everyone's problem by being aggressively flirtatious with anything that moved. I didn't even like Derek that much. He was fine, competent at his job, occasionally funny. But when he leaned in close to tell me some story about a client, laughing and touching my arm, I saw Marcus watching from across the bar. And I didn't move away. I didn't move away because some sick part of me wanted to see what Marcus would do. Would he make a scene? Would he come over and stake some kind of claim? Would he get angry, finally give me a reason to paint him as the bad guy I was already pretending he was? He did none of those things. He just looked sad and then looked away. When we got home that night, he was quiet. I was buzzing with alcohol and adrenaline and something that felt like anger but was probably closer to shame. What's wrong? I asked, even though I knew. Nothing, he said, you're being weird. He turned to me and I could see him trying to decide whether to say something. Derek was pretty friendly tonight. He's like that with everyone. Okay, are you seriously going to be jealous right now? I'm not jealous, you are. You're jealous because a coworker was talking to me. That's insane, Marcus. I didn't say I was jealous, I was just making an observation. I threw his own words back at him, the ones I'd used about him being emotional. Right, an observation, sure. He dropped it, but I could see I'd scored a point in some game only I was playing. The game where I systematically destroyed his ability to express any needs or feelings without being mocked for it. Derek asked me to lunch the next week. Just lunch, he said, to discuss a potential collaboration between our departments. It was legitimate enough, but I knew it was also more than that. I could have said no. I could have suggested a meeting in the office instead. But I said yes, and I didn't tell Marcus about it. Nothing happened at that lunch. Derek talked about work, made a few comments that could have been flirtatious if I chose to interpret them that way, and we split the check. But when Marcus asked me how my day was that evening, I said it was fine. I didn't mention lunch. I added a lie of omission to my growing collection of small betrayals. The second lunch happened 2 weeks later, then a third. By the fourth one I was telling myself this was normal, that I was allowed to have work lunches, that Marcus had no right to know about every meal I ate. But I also knew I was hiding them for a reason. Marcus found out through Instagram, of all things. Derek tagged me in a story, just a stupid picture of the restaurant with a caption about great lunch conversations. I didn't even see it until Marcus asked me about it. When did you start having lunch with Derek? I felt my whole body go defensive. It's just work stuff. Why? You didn't mention it. I don't have to report every single thing I do to you, Marcus. I'm not asking you to report anything. I just wondered why you didn't mention it. You usually tell me about your day. Well, maybe I'm tired of the interrogation. Asking about your day is interrogation now? I grabbed my phone and headed to the bedroom. I can't do this right now. That night, I lay in bed and felt something close to panic. Not because I was doing anything wrong with Derek, but because I realized I was creating the exact situation I claimed to be afraid of. I was giving myself an escape route, a backup plan, a reason to blow everything up before Marcus could hurt me first. The rational part of my brain knew this was self-sabotage. But the louder part, the part that had been hurt before, the part that learned from my parents' toxic marriage that love was just a weapon people used against each other, that part was driving now. I started mentioning Derek more at home, casually like it was nothing. Derek thinks I should apply for the senior position. Derek has the funniest stories about his college days. Derek suggested this new lunch place. I watched Marcus's face every time I said the name, watched him try to keep his expression neutral, watched him fail sometimes, a flash of pain or concern crossing his features before he could hide it. I was torturing him and I knew it and I couldn't stop. Jenna confronted me about it over drinks. What are you doing with Derek? Nothing, we're friends, colleagues. Does Marcus know how much you're seeing him? Why does everyone think Marcus owns me? I'm allowed to have male friends. Of course you are, but you're not talking about him like a friend, you're talking about him like, I don't know, like you're trying to make someone jealous. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting it looks like you're sabotaging your relationship on purpose. I finished my drink and ordered another one. You don't know what you're talking about. I've known you for 10 years, I've seen you do this before. Every time you get close to someone, you find a way to destroy it before they can leave you. Thanks for the amateur psychology, Dr. Phil. I'm serious, Marcus is a good guy, he loves you, and you're going to lose him if you keep this up. Maybe I want to lose him, I said, and the honesty of it shocked both of us. Jenna just looked at me for a long moment. Then break up with him, don't torture the poor guy. But I didn't break up with him, I kept going to lunch with Derek. I kept mentioning him at home. I kept watching Marcus try to be cool about it, try to be the understanding boyfriend who wasn't controlling or jealous. I kept pushing and pushing, waiting for him to snap, to give me the justification I needed. The night it all fell apart started so normally it almost hurts to think about. Marcus made dinner, some pasta dish he'd been perfecting. He'd been trying so hard lately, doing all these little things to win back whatever he felt slipping away. It made me mean. This is really good, I said, and I meant it. Thanks, he said, smiling. It was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. Derek was saying he's been trying to learn to cook too. Apparently he's terrible at it. The smile faded. Cool. What's wrong? Nothing. You're doing that thing where you say nothing but you mean something. He put down his fork. Do we have to talk about Derek during dinner? I was just making conversation. You're always making conversation about Derek. Derek this, Derek that. I feel like he's the third person in this relationship. That's dramatic. Is it? When's the last time we had a conversation where you didn't mention him? I stood up, my appetite gone. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Because I feel like I'm losing my mind here. You have lunch with this guy multiple times a week, you talk about him constantly, and I'm supposed to just be fine with it. You're supposed to trust me. Do trust you, it's him I don't trust. Oh, so now I need to be protected from the big bad man who might take advantage of me? That's not sexist at all. That's not what I said. It's what you implied. You think I'm too stupid to know when someone's hitting on me. I think you know exactly when someone's hitting on you, Marcus said quietly. That's what scares me. We stared at each other across the kitchen. My heart was pounding. This was it, the moment I'd been engineering for months. But instead of feeling triumphant, I felt sick. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying I don't understand what's happening anymore. I feel like you want me to be jealous, like you're testing me or something. That's paranoid. Is it? Because it feels like ever since I told you I was uncomfortable with how much time you spend with Derek, you've doubled down on spending time with him, like you're trying to prove a point. He was right. He was absolutely right, and we both knew it. The point is that I'm an autonomous person who doesn't need permission to have friends. I never asked you for permission. I asked you to consider my feelings. Your feelings of jealousy, you mean? Yes, he said, and his voice cracked. Yes, I'm jealous. I'm jealous because the woman I love spends more time having lunch with another man than she does talking to me. I'm jealous because you light up when you mention his name in a way you haven't lit up about anything I've done in months. I'm jealous because I can feel you leaving me and I don't know how to stop it. This was my moment to de-escalate, to be honest. To admit that none of this was really about Derek, that it was about my own fear and damage and self-sabotage. Instead, I went for the killing blow. Maybe if you were more confident in yourself, you wouldn't need to be jealous. It's honestly kind of pathetic. The word hung in the air between us. Pathetic. I'd called the man I supposedly loved pathetic for having the audacity to have feelings about my behavior. Marcus looked at me for a long time. I expected anger, yelling, something I could use to justify myself. Instead, he just nodded slowly. You're right, he said. It is pathetic. Then he walked into the bedroom and started packing. I stood in the kitchen, frozen. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to fight back. He was supposed to give me something to work with to make himself the villain. Instead, he'd agreed with me, and somehow that made everything so much worse. I followed him to the bedroom. "What are you doing?" "Packing," he said calmly, pulling clothes from drawers. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. You just called me pathetic for caring about our relationship. I think that's pretty clear communication about how you feel about me." "I didn't mean it like that." He stopped packing and looked at me. "How did you mean it?" I opened my mouth and nothing came out, because how had I meant it? Exactly how it sounded. As a weapon designed to hurt him so badly he'd either fight back or leave, and either way I'd be off the hook. "I was angry," I finally said. "You're always angry lately, at least when it comes to me." He went back to packing. "I thought maybe we were just going through a rough patch. That maybe if I was patient enough, if I tried hard enough, we'd get back to how things were. But tonight I realized something." "What?" "You don't want to get back to how things were, you want out, you just don't want to be the one to pull the trigger." "That's not true, isn't it? Think about it, really think about it. Have you been happy with me, with us at all in the last 6 months?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to lie to buy myself more time, to keep him in this limbo where I could push him away but not lose him entirely. But something in his face stopped me. "I don't know," I whispered. "Well, I can't do this anymore. I can't spend every day wondering what I did wrong, trying to figure out how to make you look at me the way you used to. I can't compete with Derek or whoever comes after Derek. And I can't be with someone who thinks my feelings are pathetic." I said I didn't mean it. "But you did, and the awful thing, you're not even wrong. It is pathetic to stay with someone who treats you like an inconvenience. It's pathetic to keep trying to earn love from someone who's made it clear they don't want to give it. So yeah, I'm pathetic, but at least I'm pathetic somewhere else now." He zipped up the duffel bag. Everything he owned, everything he'd brought into my apartment 8 months ago with such hope and excitement, fit into one bag. That's how little space he'd taken up in my life physically. Emotionally was a different story. "Where are you going to go?" I asked. "My brother's. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff this weekend when you're at your mom's." He knew my schedule. He still knew my schedule, was still thinking about how to make this easier on me even as I was destroying him. "Marcus, please, can we just talk about this? We've been talking about this for months. You've just been saying it with actions instead of words." "Picked up the bag. I'm not mad at you. I mean I am, but more than that I'm just sad because I really thought we were going to make it." "We still can," I said desperately. "I'll stop having lunch with Derek. I'll work on my anger. We can go to counseling." "You don't want counseling. You want me to forget this happened so we can go back to the way things were, where you slowly push me away and I slowly lose my mind trying to figure out why." "That's not fair." "No," he agreed. "It's not. None of this is fair." He walked toward the door and I followed him, my mind racing for something to say that would fix this. But what could I say? That I loved him? I did in some broken way, but I'd spent months proving that my love was toxic, that it came with conditions and tests he'd never pass. At the door, he turned back to me one last time. "For what it's worth, I hope you figure out whatever it is you're running from, because it's not me. It was never me. You're running from something in yourself, and until you face that, you're going to keep doing this to people." Then he left. The door closed quietly behind him, no dramatic slam, no final angry words, just a soft click that somehow felt louder than any fight we'd ever had. I stood in the silence of my apartment for a long time, then I called Jenna. "He left," I said when she answered. "Oh honey, what happened?" I told her everything, including what I'd called him. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Do you want me to come over?" she finally asked. "No, I think I need to sit with this." "Okay, but call me if you need me, and maybe think about talking to someone, a professional someone." After we hung up, I walked through the apartment. It looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but it felt completely different. The notes were gone, the little reminders he'd leave around. He must have collected them when he packed. I hadn't even noticed he'd stopped leaving them a few weeks ago. When had that happened? When had he given up? I checked my phone compulsively for 3 days. No texts, no calls, nothing. On the 4th day, I broke and texted him. "Can we talk?" 3 hours later, "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "I miss you." No response. I went to work and pretended everything was fine. Derek asked me to lunch and I said no, I was busy. He asked again the next week and I snapped at him that I wasn't interested. He looked confused and hurt, and I felt a sick satisfaction in it. At least I could still hurt someone. Jenna took me to therapy. Actually drove me there and waited in the parking lot to make sure I went in. The therapist, Dr. Chen, was a small woman with kind eyes and a way of asking questions that made me want to cry. "Tell me about your parents' marriage," she said in our second session. I told her about the fighting, the silent treatments, the way my mom used my dad's love for her as a weapon, the way he'd eventually stopped showing affection because any vulnerability was ammunition for the next argument. "And you learned what from watching that?" Dr. Chen asked. "That love is dangerous, that caring too much gives other people power over you. So when Marcus showed you he cared, I saw weakness, I saw someone giving me power to hurt him." I started crying. "And I used it. I used it over and over until he had no choice but to leave." "What do you think you did that?" Because I'm broken, because I'm just like my mom. Or because you're terrified of being like your dad, of being the one who loves more, who gets hurt more. That thought had never occurred to me. I'd spent so much time being afraid of being my mother, the cruel one, that I never considered I was even more afraid of being my father, the destroyed one. The weeks turned into months. Marcus came and got his stuff while I was out, just like he'd said he would. He was organized about it, didn't take anything that was mine, left his key on the kitchen counter. Jenna was there to supervise and she told me he'd looked tired but okay. Did he ask about me? I asked. No, she said gently, I'm sorry. I saw him once 3 months after he left, at a coffee shop with a woman I didn't recognize. They were just talking, maybe just friends, but the way he smiled at her made my chest hurt. He looked lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. He saw me watching and his smile faded. We made eye contact for a brief moment and then he looked away. Not angry, not sad, just indifferent. That was worse than anything. I kept going to therapy. Dr. Chen helped me understand that my behavior with Marcus was a pattern I'd been repeating since my first relationship at 16. Get close, get scared, push away. Sometimes with another guy, sometimes with cruelty, sometimes just with distance. But always before the other person could leave me first. You're trying to control the narrative of your own abandonment, she explained. If you make them leave, you can tell yourself it was your choice. But I didn't want him to leave. Didn't you? Not consciously, maybe. But unconsciously, you orchestrated exactly the outcome you claim to fear most. That's what self-sabotage is. I started working on it, on myself, on my patterns, on my fear of vulnerability. It was slow, painful work. There were days I wanted to quit, to tell myself I was fine the way I was, that Marcus was just too sensitive like I'd originally claimed. But then I'd remember his face when I called him pathetic. I'd remember how he'd agreed with me, how he'd taken my cruelty and turned it into self-respect by leaving. How he'd loved me enough to stop loving me when I made it clear I didn't want it. 6 months after he left, I wrote him a letter. Not to send, Dr. Chen said, just to process my feelings. But I ended up sending it anyway one night when I'd had too much wine and too little sleep. I told him everything. About my parents, about my fear, about how I'd sabotaged us on purpose because I was too scared to let myself be happy. I apologized for the Derek situation, for the constant criticism, for calling him pathetic when he was just being honest about his feelings. I told him I was in therapy, that I was working on myself, that I finally understood what I'd done. I didn't ask him to take me back. I just asked him to know that I was sorry, that he deserved better than what I'd given him, and that I hoped he found it. He responded 2 weeks later. Just 3 sentences, thank you for the apology. I'm glad you're getting help, I hope you find peace with yourself. That was it. No anger, no door left open for reconciliation, no acknowledgement of the love we'd once shared. Just polite distance from someone who used to leave notes in my work bag. It's been a year now, I'm still in therapy. I'm still working on my patterns, on my fear of vulnerability, on my tendency to test people until they fail. I haven't dated anyone since Marcus. I'm not ready. I'm not sure when I will be. I see updates about him sometimes through mutual friends. He's dating someone seriously now, apparently. Someone kind, they say, someone who appreciates him. I'm happy for him in the way you're happy for someone you destroyed. Guilty happiness, relieved that they survived you. The worst part isn't that I lost him. The worst part is understanding that I threw him away on purpose. That I had something real and good, and I systematically dismantled it because I was too afraid to believe it could last. The worst part is knowing that he tried so hard to save us and I punished him for trying. Everyone online thinks I dodged a bullet with the jealous boyfriend. I posted once, right after the breakup, something vague about moving on from toxic situations. The comments were full of support, people telling me I deserved better, that jealousy is a red flag, that his insecurity wasn't my problem. They don't know that I created his insecurity. They don't know about the lunches I hid, the man I used as a weapon, the deliberate cruelty disguised as independence. They think I'm the victim in this story because that's the version I told them. But I'm not the victim. I'm the villain who convinced herself she was the hero. In Marcus was just a good man who loved someone incapable of accepting love without trying to destroy it first. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stopped when Jenna first warned me. If I'd been honest during that conversation when he said I was pulling away. If I'd never had that first lunch with Derek, or if I'd told Marcus about it instead of hiding it. Would we have made it? Dr. Chen says that's not a helpful thought pattern, that I can't change the past, only learn from it. But late at night, when I'm alone in the apartment that used to feel too small with 2 people and now feels too big with 1, I let myself wonder. I know why I'm telling this story now. It's not for sympathy or absolution. It's because I need someone to know the truth. Everyone thinks I'm fine, that I'm thriving post-breakup, that I'm living my best independent life. But the truth is I'm learning to live with what I did, with who I am. With the fact that I destroyed the best relationship I ever had because I was too scared to believe I deserved it. The truth is that sometimes the person who gets called jealous and pathetic isn't the problem. Sometimes it's the person doing the calling, the one who mistakes fear for strength and cruelty for independence. Sometimes the person who leaves in the middle of the night with one duffel bag is the brave one, and the person who stays behind is the coward. I was the coward. I still am in many ways, but at least now I know it. At least now I'm not pretending my damage is someone else's fault. It's not much, but it's something. It's all I have. And somewhere out there, Marcus is living his life without me in it. He's probably better for it, lighter and happier with someone who doesn't see his love as a threat. I hope she leaves him notes. I hope he leaves them for her. I hope they're building something real, something neither of them is trying to sabotage before it can hurt them. As for me, I'm here. Still learning, still trying, still carrying the weight of what I did. The worst truth I can tell you is this: I knew what I was doing. Maybe not consciously every single time, but deep down I knew. I knew I was pushing him away. I knew I was being cruel. I knew he didn't deserve it. And I did it anyway. That's what keeps me up at night. Not that I made a mistake, but that some part of me chose this outcome. Chose loneliness over vulnerability, chose fear over love, chose to be the one who hurt instead of the one who got hurt. Marcus called me pathetic by agreeing with me when I used the word against him. But the real pathetic thing? I had love, the kind people spend their whole lives looking for, and I killed it with my own hands because I was too broken to believe it was real. I'm telling you this because I need someone to understand that I'm not the person my Instagram says I am. I'm not thriving. I'm surviving the aftermath of my own choices, learning to live in the ruins I created. And maybe that's enough for now. Maybe that's all I deserve. But God, I miss those notes.